call this public meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community, especially Pat Dewar, who passed away last week and was a friend to many in the city, and Mrs. Eleanor Pocious, mother of city engineer and former city councilman John Pocious. May we keep them and their families in our thoughts and prayers during this most difficult time. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rogan?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Dr. Rothschild?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Gahn?
Here. Mrs. Reed, dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to be held February 12, 2020. 3B, fuel card analysis received from Office of the City Controller, dated January 29, 2020.
Thank you. Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I do have
Sure.
one announcement. I wanted to thank Black Scranton for taking the initiative during Black History Month to hold the Pan-African flag raising that took place on Saturday at City Hall. I think that was great and something that we should certainly continue annually, and I believe they are having other events for Black History Month, one of them being at Madam Jenny's, not this weekend, the following weekend. That's going to be a tribute to Black women in jazz, so that's February 15th at 7:30 p.m. if anyone is interested in attending that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a quick, just as a quick reminder of tonight's Leadership Lackawanna Core Group fundraiser at Montage Mountain between 6 and 9. This is my daughter's fundraiser, which I'm very proud of her sense of community and her civic engagement. The proceeds from tonight's event goes to build a garden maze at the Valley Community Library. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I have four announcements tonight. So there are quite a few cabinet appointments on the agenda tonight, as you may have noticed if you were looking over them. I requested resumes for each cabinet appointment that has been made by the mayor. The mayor informed me yesterday that council will have these resumes prior to the final vote. What we will do is we will put all of the resumes in third order prior to the final vote, so it will be on next week's agenda so that the public will be able to take a look as well as council. Second announcement, the Stevens and Lee fee agreement remains tabled simply for the fact that council has not received it yet, received the litigation budget. And I will be providing an update in fifth order tonight on the gas card audit that council received. So we did receive an update from Moretti, the Moretti firm. I know many of you were curious about that. And also the city planner replied to Mrs. Reed today with a quick update on the MS4 permit. So I'll be providing that as well in fifth order. Okay, Mrs. Reed.
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
Okay, and our first speaker is the Honorable Mayor Cognetti.
Hello, good evening. I won't call anyone out because I don't know who it is, but someone did park in my spot. I would have been here a few minutes earlier. I do keep strange hours probably, so we'll try to keep that one open for next time. I just wanted to give a few updates tonight, and just one thing that's on your agenda, the appointments. I just wanted to be out front that my chief of staff, assistant solicitor chief of staff, Stephanie, has already signed a lease to move into the city of Scranton. I believe it's March 1st, so that is well within the 6 months. And then Patrick Sheridan, the interim BA, he's a Clark Summit resident, and we're not planning for him to be here longer than 6 months. He is an incredible asset to the city, so to the extent that he might want to stay or we aren't able to get a full-time BA before then, potentially we'd be looking to have a conversation about a waiver, but the current plan is for him to be here fewer than 6 months and to establish the parameters for what we're looking for in a business administrator before we send out that job description and that job application. So that's the process there. I just wanted to be out front and explaining that piece of it. And then you all had asked for resumes. Those resumes are being gathered, so you'll have those by the end of the week. And then just the two other pieces that I wanted to announce. So we are going to do a day of action. It's based on the census. It's Saturday, February 29th. So we'll be needing volunteers to put signs in their business windows, go door to door, maybe be present on college campuses, be in community spaces, senior centers, and that type of thing. We're really trying to really boost the efforts of the federal census employees to make sure that we really are getting that count. So that's February 29th. Megan Priambo in my front office is spearheading that along with Mary Pat Ward from OECD. But Megan really, with her background in organizing, she's a tremendous asset and to be able to spearhead this effort. The other piece is that we are going to do a monthly, this is pretty cheesy, but I'll blame Stephanie for the name. It's called Engage with Paige. We're going to do a monthly coffee out in the different neighborhoods. The first one will be at the Keystone Diner on Thursday, March 5th, starting at 12 o'clock. So that's an opportunity for anyone to come and chat with me, have coffee, ask questions, that type of thing. So starting off in Westside, and then we'll be heading around the city, but we'll do that sometime in the first week of the month around the year. So I just wanted to announce those things, and thank you guys again for all your good work. Oh, I would also say, Mr. McAndrew, looking at you, I went to the school district meeting last night, and it was, as it should be, this is an incredibly difficult issue and difficult time. Had never seen the auditorium so full, but it was, and on the silver lining side, it was good to be able to stand there and say to the school board and to all of the administrators, I genuinely believe everyone on that stage is there for the right reason to help in a situation like this. And the superintendent and I had been in touch throughout the day yesterday. I know that President Gahan, you, and President Gil-Martin had been on the phone. So we really are working together to try to mitigate the situation and find solutions. I know our code enforcement and our fire department were already working with the school district. We'll continue to do that. So it's terrible what we're going through, but I do think we have the right leadership in place in the city and in the school district to try to move ahead and do the best thing for the kids and the teachers. So, all right. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for Mayor Cognetti? I just want to say two things. First of all, thank you for coming and updating us. I speak for all of council when I say we really appreciate it, the openness and the transparency. And the second thing in terms of the school district, as we talked yesterday, we are reviving the Shared Services Committee.
Yes.
And we are, Lori's coordinating a meeting between yourself and your administration, the county, and the school district officials. And Councilman Donahue and Councilman McAndrew are going to lead that effort. So we're excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, well, it's that same point. We have the right people in all of these places who have both of you, Mr. McAndrew and Mr. Donahue, having been on the school board, and you're in a great place to be able to work really well with the school district. So it's exciting, and I think we have the right people in place in all of those entities that you just named to actually move forward on some things. I was just at one event and saw somebody that works for the school district that I talked about how we wanted to do shared services, and she was more amenable than even when I talked to her 18 months ago as a member of the school board. So I think there's a lot of momentum there. I think we can really do some things. So that's very exciting, and I look forward to that meeting.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you again for coming, Mayor.
Of course, thanks.
Have a good night. Thank you. Next speaker is Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, city resident and taxpayer. I want to compliment the mayor for coming tonight and addressing her appointments, because obviously I and other people had questions when we saw some of the residences. But I think this is the way that the administration should lead, by knowing that questions can be asked and addressing them and moving on and onto other business. So I'm happy about that. with regard to the caucus tonight with Kohansky on the 2018 audit, I have mixed feelings about it. I think they weren't as critical and analytical as I would have liked them to have been. I couldn't hear all that much. The young woman who was talking about the various notes, on the one hand, when she discussed, I guess it was note 18 on litigation, and, well, you know, can't really address anything, and then could not really justify why there was even a note 23 on the Act 511 lawsuit. And she should have been aware that it was $10 million off, and it was $10 million off because I looked at the judgment. So the newspaper reported it correctly, a $50 million assessment. So, you know, you can't say on the one hand, well, we're not going to address the litigation because it didn't happen in 2018, and then you have note 23, which purportedly addresses the Act 511 lawsuit and does it in a very poor manner. So I would love to see, though, the administration and Rainey come down and answer questions about the audit. Rainey in particular, after 5-6 years, they should have this down to a science, and they obviously do not. And I'm looking forward to hearing your update on the MS4 permit. I was looking at the backup and just have some minor questions on the fuel card analysis, the data that came by from the controller's office. And I have a breakdown of the $14,526.03. One category is unassigned for $10,702.93, which is the majority of the gas usage, fuel usage. Why wasn't that broken down? I'd like a definition of what falls under unassigned. And then I looked at the check, which I assume was written on January 27th to cover this, and it doesn't match the figure. It's for $14,247.06. And oh, by the way, didn't we a week or two ago talk about how the fact that we should redact the city's account number on the check? It's there for God and country to see again. This is what we call internal controls in auditing. This should not have happened once, let alone twice in a 2-week period. You need to stop putting this on your backup. You need to redact it. Make sure it should never get to the point of being sent down to IT. Somebody should have caught it, especially since it was brought to your attention. With regard to the Ethics Board, have you received the political campaign contribution limits yet?
We have not. Mr. Sheridan did inform our office, correct, Mrs. Reed, that he was getting that done.
Okay. I was confused, though. There are 2 legals that appeared in the paper on the rebidding for the solicitor. One which was published, I think, on January 29th, says the bids will be open on February 14th. And there was another one which was published on 2 days ago, I believe, which says the bids will be open on the 18th. And I saw no cancellation of the prior one. So when are bids going to be reopened?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I thought there was some kind of confusion that took place between the Ethics Board and the Purchasing Department, was my understanding. They corrected that confusion, and I believe the ad ran today. Oh, okay, so thank you. The RFQ proposals will be open on the 18th.
Okay, so the one on the 14th is canceled?
That's canceled, correct.
Okay, because I didn't see a legal notice canceling it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Faith Farina, Scranton. I'm going again tonight to talk about the truck traffic in Bellevue. And I wanted to thank Mayor Cognetti for taking the time to go over this with me before the meeting. She very much encouraged me that she cares about the people in Bellevue and that she will do as much as she can. She's aware of the documents that I sent her, and she will have her staff and herself go through them all. The same documents that I gave all of you 2 weeks ago. In those documents, there were minutes to the meetings from way back in 2000, 2012, 1994. 27 years I've been fighting this, not 23 like I said last time. And I made a mistake on the maps. I put South Elm, I meant West Elm, on the pictures that you have. But during the minutes, there was a way to keep track of who said what when I said something, and whatever the council person said back to me. It was a perfect record of what was done. And you eliminated that. And Mr. Gahn, when I spoke to you about this a while ago, you said you didn't think that was right either, about getting rid of the minutes. I would like council to reconsider bringing those minutes back. $5,000 is well worth letting the people have transparency, letting them know what the people say and what the council says back to them. It takes 3 seconds to print it out. You can't go to YouTube and take 3 hours to write every word. So please consider that, and I'll ask you about that in the coming weeks. Also, Mr. Gahn, about 4 weeks ago, you said to me that John Poacher said to you, we can't put the Naples out of business. We can't put him out of business, so he has to go on the streets. And you said during that meeting, and I was home and I heard it, and that's when I called you and said, are you out of your mind? You said to me, well, we might repeal the law and allow the trucks to go on Railroad Avenue and go down Broadway, six blocks of house. I'm hoping that is completely out of your realm of thinking anymore. I hope it's not something that you say again in motions after we're gone and I lose my mind again. Do you have anything you're going to say in motions regarding this truck traffic tonight that I'm not aware of right now?
No, I wasn't planning on speaking on it because we haven't received anything yet from the city engineer and the DPW.
You said what?
I
you said
said
because.
What?
What did you just say?
I said I wasn't planning on speaking on it because council has not received anything from the city engineer or the DPW.
Well, I know how he feels. So.
What Mr. Poshis had said, I don't want to interrupt you, but what Mr. Poshis had said basically was that, if we were to prohibit truck traffic in Bellevue, we may be looking at a lawsuit from that company because you have to allow the trucks to go someplace. Now, he said that at the meeting that I had with Mr. Sanacero from 3rd Avenue. But the long and short of it, Mrs. Franis, is that we're trying to find a solution to a difficult problem, as you know, as we've talked about. So again, I rely on the advice of our city engineer and our DPW, and when that does come back, then we'll move from there.
I know, but one business doesn't supersede a whole neighborhood. This is a whole neighborhood. And I was told today that that Bogart study was an old study. That old study still represents everything that is going on in Bellevue today. Mm-hmm. Houses still shake when the houses come by, and not even cavings. Your structure, your house cracks. That's all part of it. Here's my cave insurance that I pay once a year. Why would I be paying it if I didn't need it? It's very important that people have cave insurance in Bellevue. And Bellevue starts 4 corners, Meridian Street and Luzerne Street, Meridian and Luzerne, West Elm and South Washington, Broadway and South Washington, 7th Avenue and Lackawanna. There's 4 entrances in the Bellevue, and all those houses are affected. I don't really care about that business. That's not my problem. That's not the people in Bellevue's problem. That's his problem. So we can't accommodate him. We have to take care of the people. Mm-hmm. What's more important, a business or a person's home caving in? You have to ask yourself that question. So if you could come up with any other answer than the people are more important than a truck going through their streets. 40,000 pounds. He ruined one bridge. And now when he goes down 3rd Avenue, he's turning right in front of the Southside Ball Field. And he's going over another bridge. So in 3 years, he's going to ruin that bridge, by the way. Do you know what that costs to fix a bridge? That bridge he already ruined. It's going to take 3 to 5 years to fix. 3 to 5 years that these trucks are going to go through our streets? I don't think so. And Mr. Gahn, I hope you come to my house this week. And anybody else that wants to come with you, feel free. Miss Rothschild, you know where I live, join Bill, because my neighbors are quite upset. And you talk about people being sick, there's many people on my street are sick, but that shouldn't be a criteria to stop trucks. What stops trucks is that the houses are going to cave in. And there'll be plenty of lawsuits, not from the truck company that they can't use the streets. There'll be plenty of lawsuits from the people because the city is not stopping trucks that are on the streets illegally since 1995, and only 2 trucks have been stopped.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker is Lenny Cerebro.
Lenny Cerebro, Scranton resident. Good evening, kiddies. I like directing, my comments to the new administration because you guys don't know really what's going on. But this is another thing that has happened with the flooding in Kaiser Valley. About 3 years ago, before we discovered that there's a pipe that's blocked off for no reason at all, right near my property at the corner of Dewey and Lafayette Street, there's a small retention pond there with a 36-inch drainage pipe that is completely filled with soot and silt and garbage and everything. About 3/4 of the way, that when it rains, that's where the water is supposed to go to Kaiser Creek through that 36-inch pipe. But a couple of years ago, trying to figure out what we can do about the flooding problem, I suggested that why can't we clean out that pond and that drainage pipe, which Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Poches was up there, and yeah, let's do it, But what happened was their equipment, they were only able to clean out the pond and go halfway through that pipe. They were supposed to get more equipment and come back. They never came back, and that was the end of that. Boy, that was money wasted to even do that, to, the first half of the pipe, to clean that out when the rest of it is blocked, But that's another thing that happened. I wish I didn't forget my glasses, but that retention pond too. I mean, is this right? Nobody maintains it. The city doesn't come up. You've seen it, Bill. When the rainwater and the wind comes down, all the garbage goes into that pond. I personally cleaned that pond out so we could have a little bit of that pipe. Now, the city engineer came up at one time and insisted, that pipe is draining. I don't disagree, it does drain, but when it's 3/4 packed with mud and garbage and whatever, yeah, it eventually drains, but in the meantime of, the flooding going on, it backs up, goes into yards and people's cellars and basements. The grass grows so high, it's not even grass, it's weeds. I personally cut them down from time to time. The spring rains will be coming pretty soon. I even maintain the horses that are there, that people seem to, just hit and knock them over and whatever. I'm the one who maintains that retention pond to the best of my ability. I don't think that's right, so maybe we could look into it again of opening up that pipe, It's not going to cure the problem, but I always said it's going to alleviate a lot of it. In the past, me and other neighbors have submitted multiple pictures of the, when the flooding is going on. Everybody agrees, though that's bad because the roads literally turn into rivers, and the water has to go somewhere. Anyway, the last time I was here, I said I would be here in 1 week for some answers to that pipe they're supposed to open up. Bill, you said there was going to be an RSQ analysis. Did anybody do that?
Well, it wasn't just the pipe, Mr. Cerebro. It was my understanding, and Mrs. Reed is going to get together with Mrs. Perry from the police department, who's the grant writer. It's just the meeting has not occurred yet. But it was my understanding that they were going to look for grant money for an overall analysis, an engineer analysis of the area to find out what steps need to be taken moving forward, whether it's to deal with the retention pond, whether it's to deal with the pump house down there. I know there have been upgrades to that in the past. In speaking to Mr. Gallagher, it's his story on the pipe is that it was too deep and that they couldn't get to it. And to get to it, it would cost too much money. That's what I was told from Mr. Gallagher. So, but in terms of Kaiser Valley as a whole, and obviously I know there are issues there. You've been coming here for the past few years, and rightfully so. I'm hopeful that the new administration is going to look at this, taking care of the problem once and for all. Unfortunately, that takes time, and it takes an engineering analysis. It takes trying to find grant money and things like that. So.
The engineering analysis was done a few times in the last 5 years.
Well,
see, it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I know that, Mr.
You
Cerebro.
know-
That's the answer that we've been given. Again, if I was an engineer, I could come out there and fix the problem, and I would do it. But that's the answer that we've been given.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next speaker is Patricia Nestor.
Patricia Nestor, taxpayer. I live over on Greenridge Street. I've lived there my whole life, except for when I went to college. Growing up, I went swimming at the Penridge complex on Capouse Avenue, and it's been closed for disrepair for about 10 years now. So I see all kind of parks going up, different pocket parks, garden parks, veteran parks, and everybody gets this sweet grant money from the state. So I was just wondering if you could look into fixing it.
Yeah, we could look into that, certainly, Mrs. Nestor. I don't know that the city in the past, and Councilman Rogan, you might remember this, had any intention of bringing the Penridge facility back to be an actual, like a swimming facility. But I know how important parks are. I live across the street from one, and it raises your property values. When they redid the park in my neighborhood, the whole neighborhood changed. Had a conversation with Chief Grazian, our police chief, about this as well. It's the broken windows theory. If there's broken windows in your neighborhood,
I know all about it.
right. So I think that this is important, what you're bringing up, and it's something I'll have Mrs. Reed get in contact with the administration and find out if their goal is to find grant money for that park and what their plans are for that. And if you want to leave your contact information with Ms. Carrera, we can certainly fill you in on that.
And please don't turn it into a splash pad.
Okay.
People like pools.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm too big for a splash pad. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add, I became aware of that closed down pool, I think over the summer when I was canvassing and knocking on doors, and I'd spoken to the neighbors who were very upset with having that there and felt like it was not just an eyesore, but it did have a negative impact on the neighborhood, and that it was, potential breeding ground for crime in the area. And I definitely had noted that concern, and that wasn't because I haven't lived in that neighborhood. I wasn't really aware of that from before. So I thank you for bringing that up again. I'm also very interested in.
I mean, it's winter, so we have time to look ahead to the summer. If you wait till summer, it'll be too late. It'll be 11 years, 12 years. So.
Right, I agree. I think a grant program would be suitable for that to help turn it into something else that can change the impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the city is also in the preliminary stages of teaming with and also United Neighborhood Centers for a Elm Street type project, sort of like what they did in Southside for Capouse Ave. So I think Penridge is going to be hopefully a part of that long-term plan. So, but that's still in its.
I'm not aware what happened on.
Yeah,
Elm Street.
that's just in the infancy, but it's moving along. So hopefully that could be a part of it too.
I just haven't seen it mentioned in so long. Like it just seems forgotten about.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Les Spindler.
Good evening, Council. Les Spindler, city resident, homeowner. Been bringing this up for quite a while now. Has anyone found an answer to my question about having to register your rental property if you live there? Like I said, I brought it up and I said it's right in the ordinance where it says you don't have to register.
I did look it up, and depending on how you interpret the language, you don't have to pay the fee, which we know.
I understand that.
It technically does say that you do not have to register. So
Yeah.
if you're reading it by the literal, how it's written, you're right. The practical reality of
okay,
it,
but that's all I want to hear.
the practical reality of it is if you don't register your property with the waiver, and I buy it off you tomorrow as a rental, how does the city then know to send the new owner that's a rental property?
That's not my problem. That's
I-
how it's written
I
into
disagree.
law.
I
It's
think
written into law.
asking somebody to sign a waiver with not paying a fee isn't too much to ask.
Because I'm not going to fill out the form anymore. If they want to take me to a magistrate, I'll have the ordinance right in front of me, and I won't lose that case. No, I'm not filling out the form anymore.
That's up to you, but I'm just saying as a matter of practice for the city, for residents who are
Then
exempt.
redo the ordinance. Reword the ordinance. Because as it's written, I do not have to fill out any paperwork.
And I am agreeing with you, but that's not the practical reality of how the law
Then
is
redo
intended.
the ordinance, because I'm not going to fill out the paperwork anymore. Next things, my favorite subject about the illegal garbage fee. I wish the mayor stayed, because I wanted to ask her something. Heard her on the news last week, she's looking into putting the fee in with property taxes. And I think I've been coming since November when I was told. The CPA said it's illegal, the federal government won't allow you to do that. Councilman Gahn, she said you speak to her a lot. Did you ever bring that up to her?
Well, we did talk about, not moving forward with that plan because of some of the issues that I've detailed over the past few weeks and even into last year when then Mayor Evans came to our caucus with Pell and several other officials. In terms of the question that you raised, that is an outstanding question. We haven't directed our solicitor to look into it just for the simple fact that we're not voting on it this year. But that is something I know that the mayor and her administration and certainly our solicitor will look into and will make sure that before we do anything, it is legal.
Well, with all due respect to your solicitor, he's not a CPA. CPA, that's his profession. He said it's illegal.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying when it comes before council or when it's actually a viable alternative, now it's not. Maybe it will be next year. I obviously can't look into the future, but certainly that will be vetted. That process will be vetted. Okay. I mean, I don't know who your CPA is, but we have to take the word of...
It's not my CPA.
Or whoever the CPA is you're talking
When I get my taxes, I'm definitely going to ask my accountant also.
Okay.
And it's going to stay 300. Are we going to still get our discount now?
I believe so, yeah. It's written into the ordinance. The only issue, we have not received the enabling ordinance yet. So okay. I've been told that we're going to receive that within the next week or two.
Okay. Now, paper and cardboard collections. I get mine picked up on, well, it used to be Monday. Now, my newspapers do get picked up on Monday. Mm-hmm. And for the last couple pickups, they've been picking up the cardboard on Tuesday. Today they didn't pick it up. Can we get somebody in here to let us know what's going on? When are we supposed to put it out? Because like I said, they were picking it up the last couple Tuesdays. Now today they didn't. And there's cardboard,
Yeah.
If you get a windstorm, it's going to be all over the place.
Yeah. I don't know about that specific issue, if it was just kind of a one-off thing, but I know that we were told that a schedule was supposed to be sent out to every homeowner in the city regarding the pickup, the collection, and so on and so forth. Councilman Donahue, do you know when that will occur?
I'm still waiting to hear on when that's going out.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Lastly, this will be real quick. I saw recently where 2 new police officers were sworn in, which is a good thing. I saw the one lives in German, Does he have to move into the city?
According to the administrative code, when you're hired by the city, your date of hire, you have 6 months to move into the city. So,
I knew there was a certain amount of time, it's 6 months.
yep, yeah, so he'll have to move in within 6 months, and the controller's office should be checking that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Ron Ellman.
Ronnie Ellman, Council. Well, my friends, I don't have no mayor jokes tonight, so you don't have to worry about my mouth here. I know probably all of you have seen on television an advertisement for The Biggest Loser. Well, The Biggest Losers, they don't have nothing over the city of Scranton. We're the biggest losers. Like always, yesterday at Garrity's, I never heard so much crying. These people, they don't vote, they're just crying about everything. 70% of them don't vote. I voted. I don't deserve a government like we've got. 11% increase in taxes with everything else coming down the road. This isn't right. I've been coming to these meetings since Jimmy Connors, what's that, 25 years, 30 years, since Jimmy Connors was here. And I'd like to say it was a pleasure to see our mayor in here tonight. I think all those times I've been here, I don't think I've seen a mayor in here 3-4 times. And I think that should be part of their job once in a while. You know, I don't know, about 3-4 months ago, I stood right here and I said, the worst is coming to the top. Well, it got here because people don't vote. This is a shame, 11% increase. You know, Jerry's salary is over 7 times what my Social Security is. Then he sold the Parker House for his price, and he got a business. So 11% doesn't mean nothing to him. I just don't believe, I don't see how he can look himself in a mirror in the morning. This is terrible. These people have just gotten away from the public. They're in another society. You know, there's everything is coming down the road. It's going to destroy this city. And another thing, how in the world is this parking company making any money? Every time I come down here, there's places to park all over the city. And all I've heard is people don't understand how those. I've never used one because I go to the pharmacy and park. I bet 8 or 10 ladies tell me they don't have an idea how to park a car and they don't know their license number and so forth. But I was downtown. Every single time I've come, there's an overabundance of parking. And then when I was walking to this building to get my dog license. I must have passed a half dozen cars around this area that hadn't paid. You know, I had a flat tire by the hospital a year ago, and they gave me a ticket while I was sitting there waiting for my son to come. So I took it down to Penn Avenue, and they took care of it for me. But here, there's illegally parked cars every place you look, double parked cars, tractor trailers having streets blocked. Now you're talking about bicycles downtown. You know, I have my car and my two sons' cars in my name and two antique cars. So I don't know how much money that is for license plates, but it's a lot of money. Then you got inspection and insurance.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman.
Bicycles don't belong downtown.
Right.
It's
Okay.
not right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night. Next speaker is David Dobson.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident. Our favorite mayor was in the letters to the editor again today. If that guy doesn't quiet himself from up there in Scott Township, I'm going to get Lizzie Warren in town to beat him up. Mr. DeNaples and his trucks up above Lake Scranton. He was barred from building a truck facility that runs right over a stream that feeds Lake Scranton, which is our water supply. So he engineered a little scheme to put a bridge that wasn't, it had to be so many feet, the abutment had to be so many feet from each side of the stream. So he moved in this giant girder bridge and put it across, and now trash trucks are serviced and treated right next to our water supply. I mean, you know, couldn't you find any brownfields? And, you know, I know we lack brownfields in the Scranton area here. He just couldn't find one. He had to invade our water supply. But the point being that we had a mine subsidence problem in our neighborhood, and I don't know if it was the Bureau of Mines or who exactly did it, but they came and drilled and injected a form of expanding concrete into the old mine voids to shore them up. And it did solve the problem. I have some suspicions that it wasn't entirely solved. Years back, they took that breaker rock down and put that into the mines, but that was not compacted or anything, and so it probably shrunk over time. Now, forgot my glasses again tonight. Once again, I'd like to remind everybody, and this dates to the school district too, which seems to have a lot of problems lately. 36% of our town is tax exempt, and I would just love to have an answer from our state legislature on what is the average of all of the towns and all of the tax exempt properties. I would venture to say that maybe tax exempt in Pennsylvania is more like 5 or 10% if you averaged it into every town and all the acreage. So my point is that it's time that the state starts to compensate cities for housing these tax exempt entities, and there's no other way around it. I don't think we're ever going to get out of trouble here with this troubled community or Scranton in crisis or whatever you want to call it. By the way, there was an article in Sunday's paper, I think it was probably last Sunday's paper, in communities that don't pay for a police force, $700 million a year is withdrawn from the highway taxes to provide state police coverage for their town. They don't pay anything for police protection. but they get $700 million for police protection. It takes $700 million for the state police to cover their town. In Scranton, the last figure I heard was $350 per person. And once again, I'd like to thank the 511 lawsuit folks for taking that to court without consideration of what the issues are. We don't have an up-to-date assessment, so naturally our property is not valued at current standards. It's valued at 1968 standards. And with that, there could be no other finding than we've exceeded the 511 limit. And who knows if we'll get a fair reassessment anyway, because more often than not, you start hearing things and people getting breaks and what have you. I'll see you next week, hopefully. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council tonight?
Marie Schumacher. Shortly after my time here at the podium and talking about Big Brother and pruning trees, I found this card from our city forester, Tony Santoli, asking me to give him a call, which I did. And he did assure me that I had misread the article that was in the paper, and it did say the Scranton Shade Tree Commission reminds individuals and companies that it is unlawful to engage in the business of tree removal, tree pruning, etc. And I mean, to me, I'm doing business if I'm doing my own work, but this is obviously meant only for people who are individuals who are working in somebody else's yard. So if anybody at home, if I got them excited too, you don't have to worry about working in your own yard.
I got quite a few calls on it from people who wanted to, you know.
Yeah, well.
The people were upset by that.
Yeah.
Well, when I announced it, I mean, it just, people had assumed what you had said, so I don't think it was your fault, but just in general. So thank you for clearing that up.
Well, yeah, I wanted to clear that up. Now, I would like to go back for a few minutes to maybe more. Do we have a policy for the police department on, I don't even understand how anybody could be reimbursing the city or the police department, and that's another question. I've got just the whole series, but is there a policy that says who is allowed to utilize our police force,
You know,
and then reimburse us, or somebody?
I don't know off the top of my head if there's a policy. We can certainly look into that. I do know, though, that we did get a response from Chief Graziano on reimbursable overtime for the fourth quarter of 2019, but we'll look into that.
I'm pretty sure it's
What
anyone
did that
who's willing to
say?
pay.
Say what?
I'm sorry, Councilman Rogan wanted
I'm pretty sure it's anyone who's willing to pay could hire the police
I'm
department.
sorry, I didn't catch it.
Anyone who's willing to pay could hire the police department for extra duty. I know the diocese does a lot of times when they have church festivals.
And that's not a one-on-one contract? That's through the police department?
Through the police department for the reimbursed extra duty.
Well, what was it for the last year? I remember, I did go back. You brought this up with going to Chief Graziani in October of last year. So I would think by now we would have.
Well, we just received it tonight, and it's a whole packet, and I can give you a copy of it.
Is there total dollars?
Again, I'd have to go through it. There's like 7 or 8 pages of it, so, and some of the numbers are small.
And to whom does that go? Does that go to the general budget, or does that go to the police department?
I would assume that it goes to the general fund, into the general fund, which...
But I think the account it goes into is the police department account that
Is
it's
there-
reimbursing.
I couldn't,
that's why
I
that
couldn't
number
find,
is
there is
higher.
a separate account for
reimbursement?
I think it's just an overtime account, isn't it?
I think so. I don't know.
I'm sorry, Kyle, what did you say?
I think it's just an overtime account.
Well,
We'll-
yeah, there
we'll
is
look
an
at-
overtime account, but that
I
is,
think it
it's
gets
what-
reimbursed into that line item, in that account.
you think, but you don't know for sure.
I'll
Or how
find out
much,
for
how
sure,
much
but
it is.
That's my assumption, because that's why that
Okay.
number is so much bigger, and that's not, it doesn't really show our total expense, because the reimbursements go back in.
Just on a regular, like
So-
on a
so if the
monthly
bu- if the-
basis, so then the fact that you budgeted $700,000 instead of $300,000 or $400,000?
Yeah, where three or four might be our total cost being the city, but then that other 300 is reimbursed. We'll get you an exact number.
I would like that exact, I would also like to be able to see that on a monthly basis, if we could please
Well, I think they give it on.
get a separate account.
I think they give it on a quarterly basis.
Well, thinking's one thing, I'd like to see
Well,
it, and
no,
I
I-
think there should be a policy
Well,
on who's allowed to.
We'll look into that.
Okay, I'll bring the rest back next week if I'm still kicking. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you. Anyone else?
Tom Coyne. I know I tend to look forward a little bit on some of these things, but I'd like to talk to you today about the coronavirus and the wondering. I understand that the state has done disaster planning and actually done tests. I'm not sure if the city itself has a direct plan with the hospitals or has reached out to them to coordinate on this. Not knowing that it might happen, but if the virus actually does take hold in the United States, at least we have a foot plan going of hospitals to connect to and emergency resources. I don't know if there's any internal operation or communication between city and the hospitals.
Yeah, so would you like me to respond now? I don't want to
Sure.
interrupt you. Our fire chief had responded to questions that we had about our emergency coordination plan. I think it was in third order 2 weeks ago. I'll get you a copy of that. But he responded in detail that he is the emergency management coordinator for the city, and he does coordinate with the hospitals, with the county, with the ambulance companies. So in terms of the coronavirus, now I'm a hypochondriac, so now you have me thinking about the coronavirus, but I don't know that specifically if they have even thought about that yet.
I just wanted to ask that because looking ahead at this point, I wanted to take you back 101 years when my grand aunt was the society editor for the Scranton Times. She was one of the victims who died in the 1918 influenza virus. It hit this area hard. There's a lot of seniors around here which are particularly vulnerable to it. In the news, they say that the current virus is only 2.5% viable. New England Medicine says 4% is viable. The same influenza virus back in 1918 was 2.5%. Looking at that numbers, it was 50 to 100 million people who died from that influenza. Using today's hospitals, there should be a better resolution, but even with today's effects, they had 60 people die today in China from this virus itself. Looking at numbers and unreported numbers as well, because China is hiding some of the numbers. It's just very concerning because we're looking at if it follows the same path, we're looking at 400 to 800 million people if it takes hold. And I understand quarantine is helping to stop it, but I'm not sure how long that will last because viruses are tough and we're a year out from supposedly any vaccine for it. I hope it doesn't get that bad, but looking at past viruses, it's something to be concerned about, and I was just hoping to bring it forward that if it hadn't been thought of, at least someone could hop in front of this and start a plan. And I thank you for addressing that the fire chief has taken a look at it and he is the coordinator for it. And I hope it doesn't get to the worst end that it could be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It definitely is a concern. And Mrs. Reed, if you could reach out to Chief Lucas and just ask him how that works.
I'd like to say, I know as a medical professional by day, and the company that I work for has sent out memos to our employees, like throughout the network, to make us aware of the coronavirus, perhaps some travel advisories and information on it, and that might be something helpful for city employees to be aware of. So I don't know if maybe we need to coordinate with the administration, with the mayor's office, to see if that's something that we could put together just to make people aware of what it is, because I think we still need a good understanding of the risks and what to look out for.
And as you're looking at, even using the standard masks, the surgical masks, aren't effective against it because they are too wide filtration. You would need an N95 or P95 mask to actually be effective against them.
Correct. Yeah.
And even non-fitted, they're 75% effective if they're a non-fitted mask of that, per the National Institute of Health. It's a nasty thing, immunology and working with viruses, but I thank you. Just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else? Mrs. Jeffries? Okay. Mrs. Reed?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Councilman Rogan, any motions or comments?
Yes, just some brief comments. We discussed a little bit in our caucus, and I know it was brought up on the floor. There's a number of appointments before us tonight, 2 of those by individuals who don't currently live in the city. The city code states that a non-city resident can be appointed to these positions as long as they move in within 6 months, which I think is a very reasonable rule. In the past, there had been instances where waivers have had to be granted. Unfortunately, one of those waivers that was granted in the past, the individual said they were going to move into the city, which we know how that turned out. They never did. I think this is 2 examples on the agenda tonight of how this rule is supposed to work and how it's not supposed to work. In the first example, for the chief of staff / assistant solicitor position, the individual who's being chosen for that position currently lives in Dunmore, has actually already, from what I've been told, signed a lease in the city of Scranton, fully intends to. That's how the process is supposed to work. The second appointment, Mr. Sheridan, we're being told it's an acting appointment. He's not going to move into the city, but he's also not staying for 6 months. I don't think the code should be interpreted that if the person's staying less than 6 months, they don't have to move into the city or they don't have to get a waiver. If the mayor wants this appointment, I think there should be a waiver accompanying the appointment if the individual has no intention on moving into the city. The other situation, as I mentioned, completely different. That's the way this process is supposed to work, so we can attract employees outside of the city. As far as the appointment of Mr. Sheridan, certainly seems qualified for the position, but I think it opens the door to saying, well, this is only a 6-month appointment. They don't have to live in the city. So again, I don't like that way of thinking. I'm going to oppose that second appointment for that reason, unless a waiver is submitted. If a waiver comes down to accompany the legislation, then I think it's proper for us to consider that waiver. Another item I do want to bring up, and I know I think it was Mr. Spindler brought up with the recycling. We did have a lot of back and forth with the DPW, and a lot of residents have been complaining particularly about the paper and the cardboard. And again, it's no fault of the city and no fault of the DPW why the system is the way it is now. But again today, particularly in West Scranton, I saw a number of reports on the Neighborhood Association page that that paper was again being thrown into garbage trucks. I know we're being told from the DPW that that's not happening, but I really want to stress that to residents the importance of recycling. And the city has a responsibility on our end too. We're asking residents to do things a little bit differently, but it's very important that the city is putting the garbage and the recycling where it needs to go. I hope these reports from residents are not accurate. But we were told by the DPW director, relayed from the DPW director, that the paper and the cardboard is going to the recycling center. I've heard from multiple residents, particularly in West Side, that that's not the case, that it's being thrown in with the garbage. You know, I hope we get to the bottom of it. I'd like to send another correspondence to DPW if everyone's in agreement, just for some clarification on that. You know, when it's one or two people calling, you know, maybe they saw something wrong or heard something wrong, but like I said, on the West Scranton page, I saw a number of people yesterday mentioning my recycling was thrown in with the garbage. So I think it's real important that we make sure that that is being handled properly, even if it means we have to spend more overtime. The money being spent on overtime would be saved on landfill tipping fees. You know, I don't know if the city has to put more DPW workers on the garbage trucks or what the solution is, but we can't be throwing recycling away. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Rogan. Councilman McAndrew, any motions or comments?
No, I have no motions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rothschild, any motions or comments?
I do have a comment in reference to what Mayor Cognetti had mentioned earlier when she was speaking. She was at the school board meeting last night, as was I, and I did sit there for several hours and listen to the parents' concerns, and it was very, very upsetting and disappointing to know the inactions of previous administrators, and I'm happy and I commend the efforts of the current school board and administration and the superintendent for working hard to help resolve the situation in the schools and to relocate the students from Northeast Intermediate. So I did just want to comment that I had attended the meeting, and I'm going to stay up to date on this situation. I don't have children that are in the schools, but I could only imagine if I did, or if I had family that worked in the schools, how upset I would be to have them in that situation.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Donahue, any motions or comments?
Yes, just to touch on some things I brought up last week. Myself and Councilman Gahn have been asking Chief Graziano about Parrott Avenue and speed, and we did get a response last week from the chief that they're going to be putting up their speed timing signs to hopefully get some data in that area to see if we could figure out a solution to speeding over there. I also got a response from both from the controller's office regarding the Rainey and Rainey contract. When Rainey came in to do audit prep, I believe in 15, they were hired for the 15 audit. The bid was originally put out for 4 years to cover from 15 to 18. Council had amended that legislation to only cover 15 and 16. So they still did do audit prep in 17 and 18, but they didn't reach the threshold to put that out to bid. So I am trying to get what exactly the number was that was paid for those 2 years. And I've also talked to Controller Murray about getting in writing some benchmarks that hopefully Rainey could agree to, because I think that's the main concern I have, is if they didn't go over the threshold for bidding, that's one thing, but we keep on getting this late because there aren't benchmarks set. So I think the controller's office is going to be working with the business administrator's office to hopefully get that done. And I'll keep everybody updated on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. I just have a few items. The first one is the gas card audit update. So as most everyone is aware, last summer there was issues with gas card usage in the city, and council asked for a forensic audit to be accomplished. And bids went out. Moretti Firm from Old Forge was the company that was awarded the bid to do the audit. So I had asked weeks ago for an update on where we were with that audit. So I would like to read into the record now a response that we received Friday, January 31st, from Arthur Moretti, who is the gentleman that's doing the audit. Dear Mrs. Reed, I am hereby responding to your letter dated January 23rd, 2020 regarding the City of Scranton gas card audit for all activity from April 2016 through March 2019. As requested in your letter, the following is a timeline of what has been done since receiving the contract for the examination on December 16, 2019. The contracts were signed by me and returned as instructed by December 17, 2019. On December 17th, I sent an email to David Bolzoni to find out who I would be working with and indicated I would like to begin the engagement immediately. A copy of the email is attached for your information. We made our first visit to City Hall on December 24th, 2019, and met the acting controller, Mary Lynn Carey, and her staff. Mary Lynn Carey was extremely helpful in helping procure some of the documents that she had access to. Because of the holidays and the new administration beginning January 2nd, 2019, I chose to take the documents I had available to me, which included every gas card transaction of every individual, and have been working through these documents at my office. On January 23rd, 2019, my associate and I met with the new controller, business manager, and staff. At that meeting, I received additional documents and gave them an update on the status of my findings thus far. A copy of some of the findings I had made, although my audit is not complete, are attached for your convenience. This recaps our timeline so far. With regard to the progress made to date, I was asked to focus first on Fire Chief DeSarno. In addition to others, we have reviewed and analyzed all of his transactions. I will be sending the findings on Fire Chief DeSarno to John Murray, who is the controller, Patrick Sheridan, the business administrator, and Jessica Eskra, the city solicitor, today. I anticipate that I will be issuing my final report to John Murray, Patrick Sheridan, and Jessica Esker by February 12th, 2020, providing any additional information necessary could be obtained. Please let me know if the distribution list should be expanded. Finally, please be advised that we are still on budget with the proposed costs that I provided, and our fees will not exceed the estimate. I hope this information addresses your needs. If you have any questions, need any additional information, or would like to discuss in person, please do not hesitate to contact me, Arthur Moretti, CPA. The only other thing I want to mention in the backup documentation, there was an email from Mr. Moretti sent to David Bolzoni, Jessica Eskra, Becky McMullen, and Mary Lynn Carey on Monday, December 30th, 2019. Mr. Moretti says the following: Good afternoon. I hope you are all enjoying your holiday season. Let me first begin by thanking all of you for your kind assistance in providing me with some of the information needed in order for me to begin the gas card audit. I understand it was difficult to get the information over the holiday since many of the key positions were off. However, there is additional documentation needed for me to be able to proceed. Items 8, 9, and this is bolded. Items 8, 9, and 10 are most urgent because they relate to the fire chief who is leaving shortly. Number 1, gas card statements from the period October 24th, 2017 through 2019. Number 2, list of all vehicles allowed to be taken home, available for personal use, and employees that they are assigned to. Number 3, documentation executed when vehicles are assigned. Number 4, list of gas cards and who they are assigned to. Number 5, documentation executed when gas cards are assigned. Number 6, a list of all vehicles purchased from the period January 1st, 2014 through present. Number 7, required mileage logs for vehicles available for personal use. Number 8, W-2 forms 2014 and 2018 for the fire chief. He says I will eventually request others. I need to determine whether tax is paid for personal use of company vehicle. Number 9, as I understand time cards and sheets are not used, I would like a summary of vacation and sick usage for the fire chief. Number 10, a job description or job function or contract for the fire chief. He says I will require additional information on other positions. However, with the fire chief leaving, his information is urgent. With regard to the fire chief's self-audit, we have reviewed his activity from June 2014 through October 23, 2017. Please note that the self-audit he has provided is insufficient and incomplete. The general rule is that the personal use of a city-owned vehicle is taxable to the employee as a fringe benefit. Personal use includes commuting, local and out-of-town travel, errands, and non-official business. In reviewing his gas card usage, there was suspicious activities such as filling his vehicle on Carbondale Highway on December 26, 2016, Labor Day 2016, and other times. I am requesting that he redo his self-audit to justify his business use using his calendar, journal, or other written means to support his business use. I might need this information from other positions as well. It also might be helpful if he can be available to speak to me prior to January 3rd, which I understand is his last day. The Internal Revenue Service's standard for record keeping is that there must be adequate records or sufficient evidence to support any credit or deduction claimed for business use. These records must substantiate the time, date, place, purpose, and travel cost, and are more helpful when logged at the time the vehicle was used or shortly thereafter. Record keeping and meeting substantiation requirements is extremely important because if the employee doesn't do his own substantiation or meet the requirements, he is presumed to have driven the car for his own use, and that value must be considered for income tax purposes. Again, I appreciate your assistance. Should you have questions or require further clarification, please call me. So that is the update on the gas card audit. In terms of the licensing and inspections assessment, I think I brought this up 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had asked Mrs. Reed to reach out to the company, Barry Isett, because it was my understanding in talking to Mr. Oleski that the assessment had not even been started yet. We had come to find out that the contract with Isett for the Lips Department assessment was never executed by the city to date. The contract is currently being reviewed. Council was informed, but the previous business administrator had never signed the contract. So, Mrs. Reed, if we can ask, where we are in that process, I would appreciate it. As has been detailed here in the past, the licensing and inspections department assessment was really, I think, really important, and apparently the contract was never signed. So, and that's the way it was left with us. Let's see when this was dated. Tuesday, January 28th. So, again, I don't know how it couldn't have been signed, but we'll wait for another update on that. In terms of the MS4 permit update, Mrs. Reed talked to Mr. King, our city planner, today. The city applied for the MS4 permit in May of 2019. In August, the city was in contact with DEP regarding finishing up with supplying them with the pollution reduction plan. The city to date has not received an official report from the DEP regarding the October inspection. Mr. King would like us to keep in mind that DEP has 80 to 90 communities that are going through this exact same process. The city's current permit stays valid until they are issued a new one. The new permit is good for 5 years once issued. Mr. King is going to speak to the mayor to provide her an update, and once he has, he will coordinate with coming before council to a caucus to provide further update and information. And again, as I had requested, along with the company that's doing the stormwater analysis, because I think that's also important. Let's see, what else? The issues with that Mrs. Nestor brought up with the Penridge complex. Mrs. Reed, if we can reach out to the administration, OECD, the mayor's office, and just find out if that is on their radar to put grant money into that and what their plans are for that complex. And then Mrs. Nestor is still here. If you're going to stay till the end of the meeting, it should be over soon. If you want to leave your email or contact information, we'll update you on that, and we'll update the public. Because as I said, I do think that is important. In terms of the sound issues in council chambers, it was, and I don't know if it was because they weren't exactly speaking into the mic like this, could have been that, but it is difficult to hear. And I talked to Mrs. Reed, who is going to be in contact with the person that is in charge of the sound system in these chambers. It has to be fixed. I don't know what that entails, what the cost is going to be to that, but I would like to see it fixed. We were told that it could be something with the speakers facing this way instead of this way, which apparently that would make more sense. But again, we'll let the professionals take a look at that and get a cost on it. Also, in the caucus, we had about 5 minutes. I briefly mentioned that next week I'll make a motion that council sends a letter to Mr. Basiliga of Steamtown 300 for an update on the Electric City Garage improvements. We had NDC in here a week ago, and I was not pleased to find that, you know, the Electric City Garage, we're moving at a snail's pace, is the long and short of it. So I think we need, you know, I read Mr. Basiliga's quotes in the paper. I think we need more information than that. To me, it's not good enough of a reason to be this far behind nearly 4 years later. And remember that the garage was sold for $1. The parking authority put up nearly $3 million for improvements, so there needs to be a better answer than that in my mind. Also, we were informed today that in terms of a court date for the city LST tax approval, that is going to be set for February 19th, 2020. And that is all I have.
5B, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Carl Graziano, 418 Wilbur Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18508, to the position of police chief, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Alan Lucas, 2722 Bernie Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, to the position of acting fire chief, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? Yes, on the question. I did ask for an explanation as to the acting title, and Mrs. Reed has been in contact with the mayor's chief of staff, and we're going to receive a response to that prior to the final vote next week. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Dennis Gallagher, 311 Pattison Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, to the position of Director of the Department of Public Works, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5E, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Jessica L. Eskra, Esquire, 44 Snook Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as city solicitor, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5F, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Stephanie Pisco, Esquire, 2001 Riggs Street, Dunmore, Pennsylvania, 18512, as Assistant City Solicitor, Chief of Staff, effective January 6, 2020.
So moved.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5G, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Wayne Beck, 105 Yesu Drive, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, to the position of City Treasurer, effective January 6, 2020.
So moved. Sorry.
That's okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are we all still awake here, or are we falling asleep? This isn't a long, okay. On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5H, for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Thomas Oleski, 1124 Rock Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, to the position of Acting Director of the Department of Licensing, Inspections, and Permits, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5I for introduction of resolution, appointment of Frank Swetnicki, 708 O'Hara Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, to the position of Information Technology Manager effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5I be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5J for introduction of resolution, appointment of Mary Pat Ward, 1322 Schlager Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, to the position of Executive Director, Office of Economic and Community Development, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5J be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5K for introduction of resolution, appointment of Brian Fallon, 719 River Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, to the position of Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5K be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5L for introduction of resolution, appointment of Patrick J. Sheridan, CPA, 106 Stone Ridge Circle, Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, 18411, to the position of Interim Business Administrator, effective January 6, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5L be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Is there a second? On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, file of the council number 3, 2020, and an ordinance amending file of the council number 2, 1983, and an ordinance amending file of the council number 39, 1977, entitled, an ordinance establishing rates of discount and penalties on taxes due on real estate to the city of Scranton by amending certain provisions relating to discounts, the discount period, installment payments, and penalties on taxes due on real estate to the city of Scranton.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, no business at this time.
If there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.